What is good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today we are hitting a posterior session in the gym. So I've just taken my pre-workout, which is just basically a can of White Monster, which is the GOAT of all energy drinks. We're hitting a deload week this week, basically because my body is a little bit in bits from, I guess, the first 12 weeks of the bulking sort of season, if you like. So we're running a deload week. I'm going to run through my usual posterior session, or posterior one, because I have two posterior sessions. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's go and hit the gym. So here I stupidly forgot to turn my mic on, so I'm just going to talk over what I'm kind of saying here. But for my deload weeks, I'll tend to just reduce the amount of sets I'm doing within my training session. So nothing really changes in terms of exercises or training intensity. I will just reduce the amount of volume that I'm doing within each exercise. So usually I'll do 3 sets of each exercise. Here I'm just simply going down to 2 just to keep things simple and reduce the amount of work that my body is doing within my sessions. And again, more voiceover needed. I promise I'll get better at this YouTube thing. But essentially for deload, I never really schedule them in. They're not something that I will plan 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks in advance. I will generally just go by how my body is feeling and reacting between my sessions, because obviously during a bulk where you're looking to lift heavier each and every week, you're putting your body under that increased stress and tension, so your body is going to start to ache and fatigue from time to time, and you will notice that your body doesn't really respond or I guess recover well in between sessions. And for this, in previous weeks, I've noticed that I've been taking a little bit longer in between sets, not really being able to train with enough intensity towards the back end of my sessions because of that tiredness and fatigue, which is why I knew to bring this deload in for this week, where I'll just reduce on that intensity, like I said earlier, allow my body to go through a little bit of an active recovery, because I'm still working, I'm still looking to train hard, but I'm just not putting it under so much stress that it was before with the amount of work that I was doing in between each session, which should allow me to then feel a little bit better for next week and then rebuild on my sessions again. So I'd always just say go by on how your body's feeling in between sessions. Are you finding you're a bit more tired and fatigued during the week, in between sessions, at the end of your sessions? Because if so, then you might just need a deload as well to allow you to re-continue that building phase.
Well, I've just realised that the clips that I've just been recording in here, my mic wasn't on. 2 sets of seated row and 2 sets of lat pull down, and then I've been at the full posterior one. But yeah, fucking technology. Now you'll see on bits of kit like the Prime kit, there's 3 different pins, 1, 2, 3. This just basically means that you can just set up the resistance of the machine in a way that's preferable for you. So if you want it heavier at the beginning, heavy in the middle, heavy at the end, or split in between, I would typically just have it in the middle, just so I'm saying it's a little bit more consistent throughout. But you might find that during some movements you're struggling right at the end of the lift a little bit, or whatever, and you might want to then work on obviously putting the resistance or more of the weight on that side of the resistance when it comes to the machine. And like lat pull downs, I used to do a wide grip, but I just feel that the Prime kit as well, with the sort of diverging handles, lines up better with my shoulders, so you can actually get more of a squeeze in your lats, because you're driving in that sort of right line from where your lats are and then pulling down, as opposed to a wider grip. Doesn't quite line up as well, so that's why I do the sort of Prime kit. really triggers me when people start hogging bits of kit. Like you're on one machine and then you go and leave 2 to 3 bags. Why you've got 2 to 3 bags, I've no idea. On another bit of kit. As if you're using it, it's just bonkers. So if you're using one bit of kit at a time, fucking wait your turn if someone else gets on it.
So my new training split, what is it and why did I change from the first 12 weeks of the year? Well, at the start of the year, when I looked to sort of take my bulk more seriously for 2025, I set myself a 12-week training split or training program, and it was split into a 6-day training split with 2 anterior, so front of the body sessions, 2 posterior sessions, back of the body, and then an arms and a leg session to make up the remaining 2. Now, within the 2 anterior sessions would only have been determined by which part of the body I was going to put more focus on. So was it going to be more chest focused or more shoulder focused? And then when it came to the posterior sessions, it was whether it's going to be more of a focus on the back or a focus on the glutes and the hamstrings. So anterior 1 might have been more chest focused and anterior 2 might have been more shoulder focused. And then the same for posterior, might have been posterior 1 being more back focused and posterior 2 being more glutes and hamstring focused. And then, like I said, the remaining 2 days would be an arm session and then strictly legs for their other session. But what had happened over the last sort of couple of weeks was that I was really only training sort of 5 days a week, maybe because of fatigue and tiredness in the body, hence the deload, or for the fact that just time restraints were meaning it was really, really difficult to train with the right intensity across 6 days. And I was sort of then using the 5th session because the first 4 days would have, or 4 of the days would have been anterior and posterior days. The 5th session would then been a strictly arm day because that's an area of the body that I do want to grow as well. So putting more emphasis on that would have been a bit of the focus, and particularly as I wasn't really hitting arms that much outside push and pull movements. I wasn't really hitting the arms enough for them to grow, hence that extra day for an arm day. But as we're now well into April, I've decided to change my training program, at least for the next 12 weeks. More so to do with helping recovery, but also to, I guess, work a little bit better with me dropping a day's training. So I'm going to go from 6 days training to 5 days and actually stick to 5 days over the next 12 weeks. And therefore just changing how I'm going to group said muscles within those sessions. So this is how my new training program is going to look. We're still going to have an anterior day, which is also going to include a little bit of tricep work. And within the anterior session, we're going to have pec fly and Atlantis incline because they're 2 of my favourite chest movements, and they're movements I've been progressing pretty nicely in over the last sort of few weeks. Pec fly is going up, numbers are flying with that, and the Atlantis incline, we're now hitting 200 kilos for reps as well. So it's just a case of now just smoothing over that movement and just controlling the negative a little bit more, so we're spending more time under tension for that particular movement. And then my shoulder exercises aren't going to be any sort of shoulder pressing movements, but more isolation on the side delts, because I find that hitting a little bit of incline chest is going to work your front delt a little bit more anyway, so I don't really need to be putting too much emphasis on that. But to create that nice wide shape, that wide physique for your top part of your body, we're going to go for cuff laterals because I find that a really nice movement. And then I'm going to add in a crucifix as well, just because the one time that I've done it before, I actually really, really enjoyed it. So I now want to just put that in and just add a bit more variety when it comes to training side delts. And then my rear delt flies are going to come in this session as well. So the back of my shoulders, and then we're going to finish with some triceps, which are going to be some dips as well. So I'm either going to go bodyweight dips or a seated dip movement. I'm erring towards the side of more seated dips just because finding a belt, clipping weights onto it to allow for that progressive overload, it's just going to be, I think, a bit time consuming, just sort of piss me off if I can't find it. So I'm going to stick to a seated dip movement as well. I'm going to hit 3 sets on that. So all 6 exercises are going to be 3 sets. I'm not going to change anything in relation to that. The posterior and bicep session, so more back and more pulling movements, are going to be RDLs. They're going to stay in because I'm progressing on those nicely. Grip strength has improved, allow me to lift heavier on those. And then still keeping seated hamstring and standing hamstring curls in, although we're only going to go 2 sets on the standing. And then we're going to add more glutes in as well, because where I've been missing the leg session from the previous split, things like glutes and adductors have been lacking a little bit. So I want to put them in and still be training them consistently. So 2 sets of the glute builder are going to be in there, and then the back work is going to round off the session with my usual lat pull down and seated row, and then a bit of incline bicep work as well. So we've got 7 exercises in there, but the standing and glute builder, standing hamstring curl and the glute builders are only 2 sets each. So not a lot of volume on those. So even though it's an extra, I guess, exercise in that session, volume wise isn't going to be too much of an issue because it's still almost like training how I was before. Then the third day is going to be a strictly leg session. So this is where I'm going to go ham even more so on the legs, and incorporating quads and hamstrings together, whereas previously, because of how I was splitting anterior and posterior and then skipping the leg session, typical, I wasn't really training legs altogether in that regard. So we're now going to add in a leg session, and this is going to feature more of the accessory movements. So the adductors are going to be in there. We're going to have more calf focus, so calf extension and calf raises to try and help those grow, even though they never do. And then we're going to use the pendulum as the main compound lift, if you like, and then leg extension and lion hamstring curl. The reason I've gone with the pendulum over barbell back squats is just because it adds variety. I've not trained on the pendulum for quite a while, and I want to give that a go again and run those numbers up as well over the next 12 weeks. So that's how my leg sessions are going to look. And again, just 3 sets of everything, bar the adductors at the beginning of the session, where we're going to go just for 2 sets, but do slightly more reps on those and use those as a bit more of a warm up to warm the legs up for the pendulum, which is going to follow after the adductors. And then the remaining 2 sessions are going to be upper body focused, but we're going to split those into a push and pull split. So upper push is going to be pec flies again, because I think they're a great movement for the chest, and even just for sort of like functionality, really great to allow the arm to come across the side of the body. So we're not just looking from necessarily from like a muscle growth aspect, but actually in terms of mechanics of the body, really, really helpful. Decline press is going to come in there because I think that's often a movement that's neglected by a lot of people when it comes to training. They just focus a lot more on an incline part of the chest, and it sometimes can affect the shape of the shoulder. Press is going to come in, so that's where my pressing movement on my shoulders is going to come in as well. And then we're going to use the cuff laterals again for the side delts, and then we're going to have overhead extension and straight bar push downs for tricep work as well. So we're not really neglecting heads of the tricep with those 2 exercises as well. And we're going to use the machine down at Muscle Hut for the overhead extension as well, although still getting to grips with it. So still going to work on that, but again, it's just something new, adds variety, and gives you something to get excited for within your session as well if you are training something new. Because although I think keeping exercises in continuously and repeating them over time is really, really significant to muscle growth, there's nothing wrong with spicing things up and adding new exercises in just to keep your training a bit more sort of with more variety and something else to look forward to. So that's why that's in there, and I'm going to obviously try and improve on those lifts, improve on the my muscle connection on that machine as well, and hopefully see obviously improvements over time. But if it's something that I do struggle with, then I will just change it out for maybe like a cable version of overhead extension as well. And then the upper pull session is going to feature obviously back and biceps here. T-bar row, which was in my previous posterior sessions to help them grow the upper back, which we've been progressing on with that as well. Although the upper back is something that slows down or isn't going as quickly as other parts of my body in terms of progressive overload, hence why I start with that. So we're going to keep that still in as the first exercise on the pulls day. Lat pull down seated rows in again, just because they are just a staple for back growth when it comes to building out those lats. I'll put the high row in there. So this is going to be more of a row, but again targeting that upper back and just at a slightly different angle to what the T-bar hits. And I'll probably end up hitting the high row after the T-bar as well. So once I've sort of fatigued the upper back a little bit more, I'll then train the high row again, or sort of train the high, use the high row to still work that upper back, and then focus more on the lats afterwards with the pull down and seated row. And then 2 sets of preacher curls to hit the bicep, and 2 sets of hammer curl again to hit more forearm, but then again sort of like peak of the bicep as well in there with the hammer curl. So that's how my 5-day split is going to look, and they're the exercises that we're going to run through for that split. I will typically look to train this for, as I said, 12 weeks. It may well be that I change this beforehand, or at least change some of the exercises prior to hitting 12 weeks, but just gives me long enough to really run numbers up on certain exercises. Already the staples within my training that will always stay in there, exercises like the leg extension, exercises like a lat pull down, exercises like the pec fly. Like I said earlier, numbers on those are progressing really, really well. Particularly my leg extension, I've seen big growth on those numbers over the last few weeks, and I don't think it's any coincidence that my quads are growing off the back of that, just because trousers are fitting a little bit tighter than they normally did. But with the new exercises in there, in terms of like the pendulum, in terms of crucifix for the shoulders, it's going to give me something new and interesting to try out with training, and just work on some elements of training that I probably haven't done because I've been keeping exercises the same over the last few weeks. And obviously by bringing my sessions down to 5, I'm still going to see really significant results. It's just going to help me to manage things a little bit better. Will probably mean that I'll recover slightly better as well, because I've obviously got that additional rest day in there as well, as opposed to the previous 6 days. And just helps, I think, from a psychological and mental side of things as well, to not feel like I'm sort of slacking on my training because I couldn't do 6 days, even though that's what I'd set myself. So even though I had the best intention to go, right, I'm going to train 6 days a week for the first 12 weeks of the year at least, and see how my body reacts, I knew that I wasn't really training as well come the end of the week, because there was obviously that tiredness kicking in. And obviously right now we're having a deload week. So in relation to that, that should probably help. We're obviously now sort of mid-April, so I'd imagine 12 weeks from now is going to take us through to sort of like July, August time, where we'll assess this again. And usually during summer, I'd go on a cut, obviously get lean for summer. But this year, I've said to myself, I'm just going to bulk all the way throughout the year, just so I can really maximise muscle growth, and not really look, I guess, the same between bulking and cutting. So when I next go on a cut, I can actually look a little bit bigger in relation to that. So that's the training split. That's what we're going to run. Obviously on content over the next few weeks, I'll run through my sessions and sort of how to train and how I'm training on certain exercises as well, to give you a bit more of an insight in relation to that. But yeah, that's what you can expect over the next few weeks with my training. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment if you've got any questions in relation to my training or anything I can help you with in relation to your training. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.